Welcome back, trainers. I'm Tyson Hughes, joined here by Justin Karras, here to kick off top 16 of Alpensee Tour. I'm so excited to be just back on the mic in a new game of Pokemon Champions. It feels so good to say that after, I feel like literally years now of being in Scarlet Violet. But Justin, how are you feeling?
Feeling great. It's awesome to transition to like a new era of the game, and we're already seeing some excellent gameplay coming out from our competitors. Everything has been really down to the wire. I also really am just so excited about the way that the gameplay has felt and looked. I've gotten my hands on champions for a little bit less time than I would like. You know, we have some responsibilities now being a little bit older in the game, but I have gotten a little bit of time to play, laddering a bit. It feels so new and so fresh, and especially after, the first 24-hour window. Now that people are settling in, there's a little bit more of like a metagame forming. People are getting more comfortable with the most powerful tools. This game just feels awesome, and I'm really excited with the design choices that they've made and where we're going to see the game go.
Yeah, and speaking of that experience, you yourself are quite experienced starting out in 2015 with the premiere of Mega Evolution Pokemon, which are kind of the mechanic for maybe some newer players, totally new. And I kind of want a bit of your thoughts on that, how maybe Mega Evolution Pokemon evolve the game and how they change as we get a look at teams here with Mega Evolution Pokemon.
Well, it's crazy doing this whole new world where we have, Charizard Y back, Kangaskhan is back, all of the megas that dominated the original throws of the 2014, 2015 seasons. And another one we're actually seeing on this screen, Mega Gardevoir. In fact, the way that Mega gameplay worked back in the day was kind of different than what we have in the modern era. I think that Terastallization, Dynamax, were two different these like subcategories of you can always trigger this option at any point in your match. Whereas Mega Evolution, you had, a little bit more of an understanding of where things were going. So going to this top 16 match, what I really want to look forward to is, how people end up using their Mega Evolutions, if they're protecting them more as a resource, if they're, trying to, out of the gate go as offensive as they possibly can with that Mega. It'll be interesting to see where these players end up allocating their time.
And with our players here getting into the battle, Talonflame and Glamora for Luca and Basculegion and Garchomp for Sanvy are going to be our leads here. So no Mega Evolutions available for either trainers off the lead.
Yeah, no Mega Evolutions right now, but I'm assuming that one of these players, if not both of them, has their Mega Evolution in the back. You see a speed control option here being presented from Luca. Immediately, though, getting it off the field instead.
Yeah, Rotom Wash coming in here against a potential Earthquake, and Talonflame going for a safe protect, just kind of repositioning around this Basculegion, which we know to threaten a lot of immediate damage, just going for a flip turn to reposition as well. Against something like the Glamora, maybe get Sanvy in a better position against this Talonflame and Rotom. Taking a bit of time here to decide what they want to bring in. That Venusaur, a great option, maybe not against the Talonflame, but the Rotom Wash for sure, able to threaten super effective damage, and a protect from Luca's Talonflame, great against this Rock Slide. Rotom is going to have to take a bit of damage there, going to about 50% of its HP. And with no leftovers, that damage is going to be permanent.
Yeah, and honestly, that was a very punishing switch, because being able to catch a Venusaur with a Focus Sash early, just chipping that sash could be really massive. The Talonflame does then present an excellent threat because it was able to protect, and Gale Wings would allow you to just get that Venusaur off the field. A very important piece, honestly, for the threat of that potential Sun mode. But without speed control access on Sanvy's end right now, I think it's just best that they're jockeying for position, trying to figure out what they can do to kind of sweep things. We might not even need speed control on Luca's side.
Preserving that Gale Wings there with that Protect on turn one was so important. Being able to fire off that Brave Bird into the Venusaur, bringing it down to its Focus Sash, playing around with this Volt Switch off the Rotom due to its Choice Scarf is going to outspeed that Garchomp, immediately taking the KO on that Venusaur, getting no value for Sanvy there. And this Garchomp now is left to click, most likely Rock Slide into that Talonflame, just getting rid of it, denying Luca that Tailwind. But Luca's going to have to bring in a new Pokemon, that being the Garchomp, which will definitely eat this Rock Slide a lot better. As, yep, that Rock Slide does connect on both Pokemon, and the Talonflame for Luca is now KO'd, and that's going to be Luca's speed control option now removed from battle.
Yeah, that was one of the best turns that Luca could have possibly had. And the Choice Scarf on the Rotom showing immediately why it's so valuable. You outspeed some of the things that are in like the middling speed tier brackets. And also, really importantly, being able to escape the potential for a Rock Slide flinch. So Volt switching out there, going into a Pokemon that resists that Rock Slide at the expense of your Talonflame, I think that that's a good trade. And, you know, I think that with Basculegion coming back out here, the positioning is a little bit more awkward. That Last Respects does immediately get powered up, but Rotom does have a higher base stat speed than the Basculegion. So it's going to be kind of an early metagame thing. Am I going to be faster than Basculegion? I would be kind of, you know, banking on the fact that my Rotom does have a good amount of base speed higher than that Basculegion. But if he opted to go modest rather than timid, there is a chance that he underspeeds a Jolly Basculegion.
And we do see the Rotom outspeed the Basculegion, but with that high base HP is going to be able to eat that Thunderbolt pretty well and fire back with the Last Respects boosted up by the 1 KO'd Pokemon in the back. Getting the knockout on that Rotom is absolutely huge as the Scarchomp hasn't been able to touch it. Earthquake going to follow up and guarantee the KO on that Basculegion and do a nice amount of chip damage to that Garchomp. Now Sanvy's Garchomp is going to move after Dragon Claw into the Garchomp. Lucas hangs on at 3 HP though, and with the Rough Skin is going to deal a little bit of damage back. But for Sanvy, that is a great turn. You've now removed both the Talonflame and the Rotom Wash, two really strong tools that it could do a lot into something like this Garchomp. But with Charizard now facing off this Glamora, I'm really curious of who's going to win this endgame.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is what I was saying with that last turn. You could do enough damage into that Basculegion with your Rotom, but we might end up in a situation here where the game comes down basically to a Garchomp speed tie in many cases. And the Dragon Claw not getting that KO, it's not very common that you would see it get that KO on Garchomp. Garchomp has a lot of natural bulk. This is a very scary position. Honestly, these players are also playing so quickly. It looks like they really have their game plans mapped out here, or they're ready to just flip the coin here and see who wins the 50-50.
And we're going to see now as that Charizard Mega evolves into its Y form, Garchomp on Luca's side going for the Protect, not wanting to risk it. Spiky Shield on Glamora, just playing around the very obvious Earthquake that Sanvy's Garchomp can throw out here next to that Charizard Y. It really, like you said, does come down to whose Garchomp moves first. If Sanvy's is able to move and get that Earthquake off, Glamora being 4 times weak to it would just get knocked out, and Garchomp as well being at 3 HP. What I really miss is Charizard loses access to Tailwind in Pokemon Champions. Otherwise, that turn would have been a great option to use it.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was good for Sanvy kind of doing like a, you know, a long-time veteran, bait out the Protect here if there is going to be one. Or sorry, on Luca's end, Luca doing that bait out the Protect thing, expecting a player like Sanvy to maybe not want to try and go for that 50-50 right away on that speed tie. But we do see the Mega Evolution come out here finally from the Glamora.
Oh, and a Hobbenberry on Garchomp on Sanvy's side is going to allow it to hang on. And with that, the Rough Skin is going to knock out Garchomp. And this is actually now going to be a single target Earthquake onto the Glamora from Garchomp. Oh, but Power Gem's going to move first and get the knockout on Zard. But because that was not into the Garchomp, Sanvy's Earthquake here is now going to be single target into Luca's Glamora and get the one-hit knockout.
Yeah, that was just an unfortunate trade there. I had the Glamora targeted into this Garchomp with, I believe it is Sludge Bomb. It would have been able to knock it out potentially after that chip and from the Dragon Claw. But Hobbenberry paying dividends there. The Garchomp staying alive was everything because that it's so funny to me. In the back of my head, I'm thinking Glamora can't outspeed a Garchomp. But I'm not used to these Mega Evolution speed tiers yet. I haven't played enough to know Mega Glamora speed stat. Do you know it?
No, I did not. That's why I was like, oh, this single target Earthquake was about to knock out this Glamora and this game's going to be over. But we saw the Glamora move there and choosing not to double into that Garchomp, especially in this open team sheet format, which is another blessing of like the modern age, is that you know what your opponent is running now. The Hobbenberry is not a surprise. So knowing that most likely it would hang on from that Dragon Claw, maybe choosing to double up into that slot might have been a bit better. But of course, if that Garchomp does go for a Protect, then you try to finish off the Garchomp on Luca's side. If you're Sanvy, that could be a weird endgame, and maybe that's what Luca was considering. But yeah, that Mega Glimmora was fast, and that's going to be absolutely huge information that Sanvy's going to have to keep in mind for game 2.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then in that situation, like, it's interesting. The Glimmora could have probably pinned down that Garchomp, and it would have been able to take it out with the double up had the Garchomp on their side gone first. They did win the speed tie there, in fact, and that actually just looks like kind of one of those situations where maybe we had either forgotten about the Halvenberry, or you thought that you would get the KO through it, or you thought that they would go for a Protect. And this is one of the things that you have to feel out in a best of 3 situation. This is a top 6 team. We're starting to get into, you know, the money territory. These are going to be really high stakes matches, and you kind of have to think at different levels. Excuse me. You have to think at different levels. You have to go a little bit of a step ahead. I really like the way those players ended up playing that match. It seemed a little bit more like they, you know, for how early it is, it's surprising that they seem so familiar with their pieces and how things are going to go. We're kind of just recovering from the Scarlet Violet era of any Pokemon can change its type. So especially in the late game positioning, that's something to look for, where players just, you know, forget that maybe they aren't going to have that defensive option available to them. In this case, it looks like players are lining up their super effective damage as they're supposed to. I want to see how Luca kind of maybe utilizes the Tailwind mode this game, or if they end up even going for a potential different Mega option, considering how that Garchomp on Sanvy's side was so impactful in last game.
Yeah, absolutely here. And this Glimmora, now knowing that it is going to be faster than both the Charizard and the Garchomp here, is maybe a little bit better positioned into both of Sanvy's Pokemon. Being able, of course, to threaten that 4 times weak Rock move into that Charizard is going to be super nice. It does have to be very careful of this Garchomp, though. But it is going to choose to Mega Evolve in front of it, despite that, maybe playing into the speed. Maybe playing into the fact that you have priority Brave Bird off that Gale Wings in combination with something like a Sludge Bomb might be able to do a good amount of damage to this Garchomp. And I mean, Glimmora might be bulky enough to eat an Earthquake, maybe. I wouldn't be betting on it, though. We are just going to see a Tailwind from the Talonflame on Luca's side to boost up the speed even more, and a Power Gem just straight into the Charizard, removing that Mega Evolution from Sandy's side already. And now Garchomp here is going to be the last Pokemon to move, and yeah, it's just going to go for that Earthquake, and we're going to see if both Mega Evolutions are immediately removed from play on this turn 1, and yeah, they are. So both players trading their Mega Evolutions away on turn 1 for a Tailwind on Luca's side and Sunny Day, or just the sun on Sandy's.
Yeah, and honestly, a Mega for a Mega trade isn't the worst way to start out a game. I think in this case, considering that Charizard Y is so impactful in terms of the damage it can do, it's great to get rid of it early. But now this Venusaur is coming and hitting the board at the Chlorophyll stage of speed. So it's faster than the Garchomp, it's double the speed, and we know that it has a Focus Sash, so there isn't an immediate threat of a knockout. You're kind of in this awkward, ambiguous situation where you can't immediately pressure and prevent a Sleep Powder. But do you risk maybe, you know, just eating a sleep on one of these Pokemon and trying to wake up? Because as we know, the new sleep mechanics are a little bit different.
And I want to call out there that Protect from Luca is so phenomenal. We know that because Luca set up Tailwind last turn, that in combination with this Brave Bird as well, we can ignore the Chlorophyll boost that this Venusaur would be getting, and with the Tailwind, we are actually faster with our Garchomp, hopefully, than this Venusaur. So being able to double it and get that knockout just in the same way as we saw in Game 1 could be phenomenal. But with no Charizard in the back anymore, and with it getting knocked out on that turn 1, Sanvy is now down a piece. But as well as Luca, having that Glimmora be removed, you're lacking a lot of damage. It really is going to come down to, I think, how both of these players are going to position their Garchomps as we see Sanvy swap out their Venusaur, knowing that combination is incoming.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that the Venusaur ended up swapping off the field. It looked like a Rock Slide was a, you know, there was a perfect opportunity to go for this Rock Slide. Instead, though, Basket Legion maybe coming in to what might be a heaping spoonful of damage. Potentially enough to knock it out, but as we know, Basket Legion is a little bit more bulky. I'm unfortunately surprised that it did end up getting the KO. And the Rock Slide will then, in return, take the knockout on the Talonflame. So now we have a Garchomp, an unknown Pokemon in the back, and then a Venusaur Garchomp endgame from Sanvy. Depending on what Luca has in the back, I'm assuming it's going to be the Rotom Wash because we didn't get any speed control option. Not clicking the Tailwind there kind of makes it seem like there isn't going to be a late game Tailwind option, but it could be also King Gambit. It is ending up being the Rotom, and I completely understand the logic there. Not clicking the Tailwind button, it's better for you to get the damage and trade a little bit more favorably here. Unfortunately, though, I don't think that Luca was able to protect themselves from the threat of a potential Sleep Powder hit here.
Well, I was going to say as well, turn 1, we actually did see the Tailwind, which is why I was saying for turn 2 as well, that damage is that impactful. But this is the last turn of Tailwind now for Luca. So Sanvy is just going for the double protect there to stall out that last turn and also see what this Rotom Wash wants to lock into if you are Luca. Sanvy's Sun turns are also ticking down, but will have one more turn of it. To play around with this Venusaur and preserving its Focus Sash is going to be phenomenal here to do massive damage to this Rotom potentially. And, you know, if Rotom isn't able to hang on, I think this is going to be definitely in Sanvy's favor, especially preserving that Hoppin' Berry on Sanvy's Garchomp. You know that you're going to be able to eat another Dragon Claw. Garchomp going for Protect here to try to stall it out. Energy Ball from Venusaur. Rotom's able to hang on, though, at 7 HP. What is he going to go for? Hydro Pump in the sun. Is it enough to knock out the Garchomp? Of course it's not. Being neutral damage there is not going to be enough into that Garchomp. Sanvy's Sun is going to run out, though, so this Venusaur is going to be a bit slower, and this Scarf Rotom is going to be the fastest thing. If it's able to get the knockout onto Sanvy's Garchomp, maybe this is a game, but the safest play, obviously, that Sanvy has is just go for protecting the Garchomp, knock out this Venusaur, and the game is kind of yours.
Yeah, I didn't catch exactly how much that Hydro Pump did in the sun, with the sun being gone here. I don't think that the Garchomp, I feel like it's just barely out of range. And Rotom is forced in a way to kind of target it here. But again, this Venusaur is just going on the offensive, taking the damage that it can. With the Earthquake coming out here into this Venusaur, again, it's going to do a lot of damage, but it's not going to break it. Venusaur finally going to get this knockout into the Rotom with the Energy Ball, and this is looking excellent for Sanvy. Once again, I think that the only problem is going to be that the Garchomp has so much HP. We did see in that last game that Dragon Claw was able to get a ton of damage off. Do you maybe try and risk the speed tie here, get the attack off? You can't. I'm not going to say for sure that the Earthquake is going to get this knockout into this Garchomp, even if you win the speed tie. This is going to be a tricky situation. Luca does still have a chance here.
Oh, Luca does go for the Earthquake first. Moves. Garchomp is not able to get the knockout, but does get it on the Venusaur very crucially. Garchomp here, can it clutch up with Dragon Claw? It does! And that's going to be Sanvy taking the set 2-0 with a critical hit.
And then also Rough Skin knocking out the Garchomp in return. One thing I'm curious to see is if they've done anything to the Rough Skin mechanics. Should be the one, yeah, Sanvy should be the clear winner here. But we have seen a lot of changes moving into this new game. And also just different mechanics, sometimes maybe not functioning the way that we thought that they did exactly in Scarlet and Violet. So very awesome there to see that, you know, there wasn't any surprise mechanic unveiled. Sanvy did end up playing a spectacular series there, winning in a 2-0 fashion. The Basket Legion sack was quite interesting to me because, as you had pointed out, the Tailwind was actually up, completely missed that in the first turn. And the Tailwind had gone up, so we had speed control, and it was pretty much all in Luca's favor to, you know, roll through that game, put out all your offensive pressure. The Venusaur doesn't actually have as much of a, you know, pressure and force out there without the threat of that fast Sleep Powder kind of taking one of your active offensive pieces right away, putting it to sleep. It can't attack. So sending that Basket Legion out, it worked out well that it ended up getting knocked out, because getting to go back into that last couple of turns with at least one turn where the Tailwind was gone but the sun was up was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what went well that game is Luca Sanvy realized very quickly that once that Glamora was gone, Basculesian loses a lot of power, especially knowing that the Rotom outspeeds it, considering they're both Choice Scarfed. So realizing that Basculesian was a better removal there, just getting rid of that piece for you and preserving that Focus Sash on the Venusaur to play around and force Luca into a certain way to play, I think really worked out. And even though Energy Ball might not get the big one-hit knockout into Rotom like something like Leaf Storm maybe would, it was able to consistently get there, and playing into those turns of Sun, even though Charizard got knocked out as well, Sanvy did an excellent job at using every single turn of Sun when he was able to. And Luca, tried their best. I think without that critical hit, as we saw in game 1, would have been able to live that Dragon Claw, and with the Rough Skin would have been able to knock it out and bring us to a game 3. But critical hit there for Sanvy, saving it out. You have to play for things like that. I think just as well, we kind of glossed over it, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it, is the Mega Evolutions both being traded immediately on turn 1, and just going to show that it's not, yeah, they are stat sticks, but they bring a lot more to the table than that. The Glamora just having the pressure of being able to knock out a Pokemon like that, and then Charizard, of course, setting up the Sun and enabling the rest of Sanvy's game plan.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, like in the early turn, I'm like, all right, they went for the Mega Evolution right away. If the Garchomp did go for something like a Rock Slide, the added bulk that you get from your Mega Evolution would make that worth it right away, not to mention the amount of extra damage that you're going to do. I'm sure that Power Gem probably is going to knock out a Charizard Y either way, but imagine they end up swapping one of their other pieces in. The pressure from Sanvy's Garchomp to click a Rock Slide, immediately remove your Talonflame, that's there. The Venusaur not being on the field, however, meant that, you want that speed. Knowing that Glamora now outspeeds, or I think it maybe is potentially I looked it up, it's 101 base speed. I believe that's like almost the same speed tier as Garchomp. I think, is it 101 or 102?
It's 102.
102, yeah. So like, I'm not even sure if Sanvy's Garchomp was Max Jolly in that case.
Yeah.
Because I believe in game 1 we saw the Mega Evolution from Glamora, it outsped without any Tailwind support.
Yep. A lot of them, I believe, are going Adamant right now, or have a little bit of bulk to live things like, maybe if you want to hang on from a Dazzling Gleam from Floette and things like that, or eat Dragon Claw maybe a little bit better and things like that. I do know a couple of them are running a bit more bulky, but yeah, seeing that Glamora outspeed and learning these new speed tiers is definitely going to be a fun challenge. But that's going to be it for our top 16 game there of Sanvy versus Luca. Congratulations to Luca, to Sanvy, excuse me, for advancing. But we're going to cut to a quick break real quick, but don't go anywhere, or I'll be back with more Pokemon action soon enough.